Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Just Two Dads. I think we're at episode number 153, right, Sean?
4 or 5, something like that.
With Sean Francis, I am Brian Altunian, and today's episode is going to be very special. We always think about our children, what happens to them after they graduate school. By the way, neurotypical family, neurodiverse families, it's all the same. Where do our children go? How do they live independently? The empty nest syndrome that many families feel, it's an important milestone in raising children. Today, we have a brilliant specialist that helps our special needs families work on transitional skills for our children with special needs. So stay tuned for a great episode of Just Two Dads. Welcome back, everybody. I am Brian Altunian along with Sean Francis. If you are catching us live on Facebook, please leave us a comment, share something that intrigues you or something you want to ask our guest. Leave a comment, we'll throw it up on the screen. If you're catching us after the fact on our YouTube channel, thank you. Hit the like and subscribe button and share with your friends. This is going to be valuable content that you can share with your families, maybe families that you know that have special needs children that are getting to that young adult phase, and tools to help them get to that next phase of independent living. If you're catching us on podcast outlets everywhere, thanks for making us part of your listening day. And if you're catching us on WSTX AM radio down in the U.S. Virgin Islands, thank you for hanging out with us. Sean, I'm going to say one thing before we always leave it for the end, but I also want to say aloha and mahalo to Sean Hall out in Hawaii, who is our producer. Believe it or not, this actually gets produced. Fiona, you're not going to believe that, but this actually gets produced, and Sean takes care of a lot of the details for us. So thank you, Sean. Happy early Thanksgiving to you, and thanks for all the work that you do. Without further ado, I'm going to throw it over to Sean Francis to get into this conversation because I think that this is really fascinating. We've had some really great, Fiona, you're part of this string of some phenomenal guests that we've had. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say and what you're going to be sharing with us today. So without further ado, Mr. Sean Francis, you're looking dapper as always, buddy. How you doing?
I'm thankful. No, that sounds so cliche because I always say that, and then we're saying it leading up to Thanksgiving and all that kind of stuff. But I am, because I've gotten perspective sitting here too, because, we do this show. Brian and I have done a couple things in the same place. Usually it's remote like this, and I'm at home. So I'm like running around doing things that, it shouldn't be doing just before signing on and everything. And then I'm like, wait a minute. That's a nice problem to have. And for that and the following reason, I am even more thankful than I ordinarily would be for the guest that we have today. Because for those of you that know, our son Elijah is 17. He was diagnosed with autism at the age of 3. And about, I think it feels like 3 months ago. I don't know, but I have no concept of time. His teacher, who is Erin Barish, who is a fantastic teacher. We just love her and her team. She says to me one day when I came to pick him up, she walks up to me. She says, I saw this post by this person on Instagram that I meant to share with you because I thought of you right away. I was like, really? Because she's aware of the work we do in financial services. She's aware of the podcast and our men's group and everything. And I'm thinking, okay, well, what was it? She goes, this girl, she posted this list of 100 companies or more that are run by and or support and hire those with special needs. And the fact that Elijah's in his last year, and she shared that with me, I was like, great. And I'm still thinking about the list. But when I saw the list, I got intrigued by the person that posted the list. And that is someone who is our guest here today. And so I'm not sure if I'm more of a host or a guest today. Our guest is someone who is a moderate to severe high school adult transition teacher with a master's in education. She was also a vocational program specialist for some time, and she is well credentialed. But what's great about it is that I almost feel, and she'll let us know, but I think that the credentials to her are secondary. But what is first and primary is her heart, her passion, and her care, and the business that she's found called Adulting Made Easy. As I'm saying that out loud, I'm like, Do you know how much value there is in finding adulting to be made easy, neurotypical or otherwise?
Right.
And our guest, after that long, but I hope, appreciated intro, is none other than Fiona Gonzalez. Fiona, welcome to Just Two Dads.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yes, it's our pleasure.
I don't want this to be
ahead,
cheesy,
Brian.
but we it's almost like we want to put like an audience clapping thing when we announce it, because we're like, right? It should be a little like
Little sound
because
effects.
really, yeah, we've had some.
We need to find that,
really
because that's how we feel.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that because I'm, looking through the website that you built, and that list that Sean had posted on social media as well, so some of our audience members can see that. It is such a phenomenal resource. So I'm excited to talk to you. So without.
And then I want to say out loud too that when I told Elijah's teacher, when I told Erin yesterday that, or the day before, that Fiona was going to be on, she said, you make sure that she knows, that everybody knows, that 99.9% of the materials that I use in my class come from her entity, from Adulting Made Easy.
That means a lot.
When I say that means a lot, because I'm thinking, here's this young woman here, is a teacher. I don't know that you have a child on the spectrum or anything like that. And you're passionate about it enough, and then you decide, I'm going to turn that into a business, something that brings about a solution. And here it is in action, because you have a fellow teacher that appreciates it. So let's start from the very beginning. Where you come from, literally and figuratively, have everything to do with who you are and where you get your superpowers from, because of who you are. So let's start there.
All right. So back to the basics. My dad has always shown me his work ethic is a great work ethic, and I've kind of followed after him. So no matter what line of work I was going to go down into, I already knew that I was going to be like him and be a hard worker and work hard for my future family. So going into college, I didn't know what I wanted to do yet. I had a friend that had her mom. She worked at a school, and she was like, hey, I know you like working with children. They have an open position for a paraeducator in special education. And at first I was like, well, I don't have any experience in that, but I'll give it a try. And so this was my first experience of being in the same room as somebody with disabilities. I mean, believe it or not, I had just had no exposure to anyone that had any sort of disability in the past. So it opened up a whole new world to me, and I immediately fell in love as a paraeducator. So from there, I worked a couple of years, second grade all the way up to adult transition, as a paraeducator. And then I was like, you know what, I want to get my teaching credential and become a teacher. I want to take that next step and have my own classroom and, do my own lessons. And so that's what led me into that. And then as far as starting my business, what got me started on that is, if you are a teacher in special education, you know the struggles of trying to find curriculum that fits the needs of all of your students. There's just no one size fits all. It's impossible. Sure. Yeah, everyone's on a different level, has a different strengths or preferences of what type of materials work for them. Some students might enjoy digital activities, whereas others might enjoy cut and paste worksheets, whatever it might be. So we have to have a plethora of activities just to cover one subject. And at the time when I first started, so I've been teaching for about 8 years, and that's not that long ago, but there wasn't very much available, especially in the adult transition realm for life skills. Right. Everything out there is geared towards general education. And then if it's simplified enough for the level that my students are at, which might be, I have students functioning all over the place, but let's say we have an adult student that's functioning at a second grade level. Everything I could find out there had little baby images on it, and it wasn't very age respectful to give those materials to my adult students. They, they would feel kind of, it's just not very respectful to them. Some students might enjoy something that has Barney on it or whatever, but that's just depends on the individual. So I try and that's what sparked or started me creating materials because I couldn't find it. So I started creating my own.
Mhm.
And then from there, that I realized I'm not the only person that's on this planet that's an adult transition teacher that doesn't have access to these materials. And so that's what kind of opened up the world of sharing these resources with other teachers in the same boat.
Wow.
And
That's
when you say that, you've created this storefront, if you will, for people to have access to teaching materials K through 12 and beyond, right? And then are teachers contributing their source material or their course material to that available, make that available for sale as well? Is that what?
Yeah, so
That-
Teachers Pay Teachers is what
resources.
you're referring to. It's a marketplace where teachers can upload their resources that they've created for their classrooms. And then
Oh,
other
wow.
teachers, maybe you're not tech savvy and you don't know how to make the worksheets, or you just don't have time. I mean, I've purchased resources from other teachers on there as well. And you can go on there and just search what you need. Maybe you need like a specific goal working on next dollar up for a math goal. And then you can find tons of different activities, and then you can filter it from there. I need a digital activity, or I need a Google Slides or task cards, whatever it might be. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And so what started first for you? What was the first? So as you started to see that there was a lack of resources out there, what was how did you do this? You know, again, we're entrepreneurs, Sean and I, and we have a lot of entrepreneurs who are guests and audience of this show. So how did you, like, I get you saw a need, and then what was your first step, first foray into it to build this?
Exactly. Yeah.
Resource.
Read my mind.
So at first I was purely just making resources for my own classroom. I didn't even know Teachers Pay Teachers existed. I don't even remember who, but as I was making more and more resources, I remember somebody was like, "Hey, have you heard of this website? You could totally like upload your lessons to there and make some money." And I was like, "Oh, I had no idea." And at the time, that website was starting to take off, but now after the pandemic, it's really taken off with a lot of teachers because there was a huge need for digital resources during that time.
Sure.
A lot of panicked teachers that had to suddenly teach online. But it just all started with stuff that I was using with my own students. And then to this day, I'm still creating resources that I use in my own classroom. And then I take requests from other people that are like, "Hey, I need this. Can you make it?"
Wow.
Fantastic.
Do you make the stuff the materials yourself, all hands on? Is it just you, or do you have employees, or?
I make it all by myself. I've had like my sister and husband help out here and there with some audio, or when it comes to like the clip art, I purchase licensing from companies. I don't draw all the clip art myself, or like stock images and that kind of stuff. I purchase
Right.
licensing from other companies. So it's a lot of, things from all over the place and then put onto one page to make it legal.
Right. But you've got quite the Instagram following, though. So there's a lot of people that are aware of what you do. And I know that, I've told Brian before, I don't have algorithms and things like that figured out, because I've made posts myself where I think, oh my gosh, this is going to connect so many people, and so many people will see this because of vulnerability or blah, 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 whatever. And there's something that's, a shade above crickets in terms of the response. And then there's something that you figure nobody connects to, and you're like, wait a minute, why are this many people responding to that? So I don't know it, but I would imagine that at least a part of it has got to be that when you post what you do, it's genuine. Like you posted something the other day that I thought was great. And I think it's worth talking about, which is the life skill of writing a check.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Go ahead and talk about that, because I think just the post alone is worth talking about because of the mindset too.
Yeah, so I made a post about, unpopular opinion. Writing checks is not obsolete, because I see a lot of, I'm part of a lot of like Facebook groups, teacher Facebook groups where, teachers might ask, "Hey, I'm looking for a lesson for this. Like, does anyone have a lesson, or like, how do I teach this concept?" And every time I see some teacher ask about teaching to write checks, I see a lot of responses say, why are you teaching that? It's obsolete. Like, don't waste your time. And I get it. Like, you could probably be focusing on things that are a little bit more important, but it depends on the student and their particular situation, because some people might go a whole year and not write a check or see a check or receive one. That's, I get it. There's other people, including myself, like I've received and had to write several checks just this year.
Mhm.
And for some people, it's still like that's how they have to pay their rent, is by writing a check, or that might be how they have to pay their utilities, or there's
I've
still some
literally
businesses.
I've written 2 checks in the last week for
Well,
my
there you
business,
go.
which I'm like, I don't even like, I can't I Zelle you, or they're like, no, we want to check. So you're right. I mean, it doesn't
Yeah,
happen
Zell's
very
not.
often, but it still happens. It's amazing.
Yes,
So I'm proud of
And
exactly.
then
you.
what's
So,
yeah. Go ahead. No, go ahead. You go ahead. Continue.
oh yeah. So the point I was trying to make is, instead of bashing on that teacher for even asking the question, you can either just keep scrolling, or you can offer help.
Sure.
And there might be a particular reason why that teacher's asking. Maybe she inherited a goal from, she got a new student and that was already one of their goals. You can't really do
Yeah.
much about it. If it's already a goal, you got to work with it. So,
Right.
don't bash on that teacher because of it. If she's choosing to write that as a goal or include it as part of one of her lessons, maybe there's a particular reason. Maybe that student is interested in working at a job that is required to write checks or receive checks quite often. Maybe
Yeah.
in the area that you're at, you have to write a check for your utility bills. So it's all dependent on the situation of the student. And, I'm just asking people to, just know
It's
that
funny.
it don't.
It's a basic life skill that everybody should just know
And here's
how to do it.
exactly. And what I did is I reshared the post and I commented on how I so agreed with you and everything. But there's the if you look at it in terms of layers, right? There's the subject, and then there's the matter, which really matters. And the subject is whether or not it makes sense to learn how to write a check. For me, I just think yes, because it's another skill to have. Just like I don't think we should get rid of teaching kids how to write in cursive, right?
Mhm.
But the matter, and what matters more than anything else, is that which we talk about towards the end of each episode, which is questions are more powerful than statements, and we should be more curious, more childlike than childish, and try and get in somebody else's shoes. Because the truth of the matter is, like you said, it's the very reason why you started your business. Maybe ask the why are you curious about that? Why, considering that we don't usually use those anymore at all, and so I just think that's fantastic. The mindset, even more so than just that issue itself.
Mhm.
Yeah. And and I was going to say, I had put up on the screen the Teachers Pay Teachers website, or site, I should say, just because I think it's fascinating that there's resource out there. I did you a disservice, because really your site, Adulting Made Easy, is really a phenomenal resource. You've got a blog. You've been talking about this, about the things that you're doing for quite some time. So just to go back. So first of all, I'm fascinated by all the stuff that you're doing. I think it's valuable. We had a couple of guests, 2 women that are running a pre-K learning center for neurodiverse children. And there's been a call to go into K through 2 and then 3 through 5. And, when it comes to like starting your own center, starting your own educational process, having access to these kinds of resources is phenomenal. So I was immediately drawn to originally Teachers Pay Teachers, but I'm looking at your website. Some people who are watching us on video, like Sean and I are like looking off screen. A lot of times we're just like Sean said, we're audience too of what's going on. Like I want to see all the stuff that you're doing while we're talking about it, because it sinks in for me. I love that you've addressed, and I think years ago I know that I worked with somebody who was starting a school, and I think they've said there are 7 types of ways that we learn. There are probably more than that. Auditory, visual, pictures, like you said, digital now. Yeah, all of those things. And so understanding how to address each one of these is fascinating. The fact that you've only been teaching for 8 years, So I'm just going to commend
That's
you.
what blows me away. Yes.
Right. Your resources that you've got available and your approach to all of this is you're a seasoned veteran of, 20, 30, 40 years of teaching. And yet you've only been doing this for 8 years. So I'm fascinated at, again, this trajectory that we've been talking about. How you got from like, I want to start to help in the transition, and let's sort of talk about that. Like why, how did this get to that point? How did you get there?
Yeah. Cause you could be, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
There's a huge need for it. You can see with the students that have come into my classrooms, the types of questions or the concerns that the parents have. You can tell that there's been a need for it, and just paying more attention to the student and the way that they like to learn. That's half the battle, is getting them engaged and into being, at school, for one thing. I have a lot of students that just don't even want to be at school. Another thing that's hard is getting them to pay attention, sitting at their desk. So those types of things is what's the basis of all of it, is figuring out, okay, how am I going to get them to enjoy learning? And then from there, how do I convince them that it's important for them to know this skill? How is it going to lead to their independence, which is ultimately going to lead to more happiness, the more independent that they are? And same thing for the families too. The more independent your son is, I can assure you that, obviously that would lead to more happiness for you, as well as less stress on you. And it's, greater independence, whether they choose to work or not. That's a whole nother level of independence, being able to work.
For sure.
But my main goal is to focus on the home first, getting as independent as they can within the home. And then if a career is in the picture, then we work on those skills as well. So that's kind of a cap
Beautiful.
of what motivated all of that.
And then I know there's a particular link with a / we'll get it on the screen, but if someone goes to your site, SPEadulting, .com, where at the site would they find the list of those businesses? Because that's something I wanted to talk about too. Did you compile that on your own? Because you're talking about, how we connected to begin with, was that list that you posted. Out of all the things that you might post on social media, that is the one. And again, this is my selfish position anyway, that's the one that carries probably the most weight. Like, we don't know, if Elisha's gonna what kind of college, if any, he'll do. Is he gonna work? Those are all the things. And to begin with, I just saw a post on next door, which can have some very low value posts, just anything that's going on in a neighborhood. But I saw one where a mother was very frustrated because her adult son had been hired by a local grocery store, and they hadn't reached out to him to tell him when he was supposed to start. They pretty much told him, be ready, I'm going to call you. And so on one hand, I didn't understand why he was dressed every day, sitting by the phone, waiting for the phone call. On the other hand, I do. But at the same time, I didn't see what the response was because it was late last night. But I posted your list and your site because I'm like, look, this is here. Like, how did you put that list together? And then where can they, find the list once they go to the site as far as searching too?
So the list it started very small at first. I, have just come across other Instagram accounts of these businesses. And so after I started kind of compiling, a little bit of a list, I started featuring the businesses. Once a week, I'll feature one business and kind of highlight pictures and a little bit about the business, how it got started, until now it's grown bigger and bigger each year. The more people that see it, the more inquiries I get of people saying like, hey, we have a business, can you add it? And I'm always happy to add it, as long as, somebody can purchase online. It's mostly online businesses that people can purchase and support. But a majority of the businesses are entrepreneurs. So it's, parent, son, daughter duo that have started a business where, they don't have to go into a formal business place and follow their rules. They can go by their own time, use their own accommodations do things that they enjoy, do the tasks that
Excellent.
they're able to do. It's all catered around that individual and what they're capable of, and it's at their pace. And so, you know, a lot of the businesses might be anywhere from making candles to artwork, making jewelry. A lot of it's handmade stuff that you can find on like Etsy or through their own websites. And then the other half of the businesses are usually like nonprofit businesses or adult programs that have started their own enterprises, and they hire individuals with disabilities. And so those are usually the two types of businesses you'll see that I have highlighted on this website. And, you know, especially this time of year when everyone's shopping for holiday gifts, is when I like to really blast this list out, because if you're able to support a small business instead of shopping on Amazon or whatever big site you're going to shop on, you know,
Right.
For sure.
if you're getting gifts for friends and family or your coworkers, these are the perfect gifts to get, you know, little trinkets and handmade gifts. And it's very meaningful to know that these purchases are not only just, you know, supporting a small business, but you're providing employment opportunities for somebody that might not otherwise had an employment opportunity. It's empowering for them, and it spreads awareness of individuals with disabilities. So it's very impactful in many different ways by supporting these businesses.
Yes, that's fantastic. And let me ask you,
and just to answer
go ahead,
your
Brian.
question, Sean, just, if people go to the site and it's SPED adulting, when I first looked at it, I thought it was speed adulting, and I was like, that would be a good name as well.
So did I.
It's special ed adulting, SPED adulting.com. And then if you scroll down, there are these kinds of posts. And I think also your Instagram handle is also the same, SPED adulting, correct? At SPED adulting. So for those that want to see these posts and go, I mean, really, first of all, it's the whole style of what you're doing is fantastic. And up at the very top of the site, it says, check out these free resources. Get it now. And so the access to a lot of this material is all over the website. Beautiful. Yeah. Sean, you were going to ask a question. I apologize. I interrupted you.
No, I was just going to ask, especially not having any experience with including family members or anything like that with special needs, anything. Do you have any children of your own?
I do not, but I am currently almost 6 months pregnant. So I got one on the way.
See, now, for those of you that want to host a podcast and you want to ask a question but be respectful about asking it, I knew that was the case, but I didn't want to ask because I should have asked before. Do you want to tell everybody that you're expecting? Okay, good, because. Yeah. And I assume that you wouldn't mind sharing because of the following, and congratulations. Yes, because the other thing you did, and this is just another example of your passion, is you posted to your Instagram about how you shared with your class, your students, that you were expecting, the manner in which you communicated that. And I think that's such a small thing, but so huge.
Oh, I want to hear it. I want to hear it. I want to hear the story.
So, you know, maybe a general ed classroom, you could just make the announcement and it would be pretty much understood what it means when you tell them. But when you are working with a special education classroom, they might not have ever had anyone that's told them that they're pregnant before. They might not know what that looks like. It can cause a lot of anxiety knowing that their teacher is going to be out for a good period of time. It's also something that could be unexpected. I might not go out on the date that I say I'm going to, be out on it. Anything can happen. So can I
stop you there just one quick second? I just want to know, and I'm going to be Captain Obvious here. That is a ridiculously high, and I mean like outside of the orbit of the earth, high level of empathy, and to you're just being you. So that's like, so I just thought I'd let them know. Cause listen, I try to be empathetic and step in other people's shoes. I hadn't even thought of it from that perspective. To be so high level, empathetic that you're thinking, Man, I must be getting old. I'm about to cry talking about something just like that. Talk about silly. But to see another human being have that level of empathy, one, it's greatly appreciated, and it makes me stop and think, look, how can I up my empathy in general and at home? So thank you for that. Sorry, continue.
Yeah. Where was I? Oh, so I prepared, in order to make the announcement, we played a little game. We did like they had to decode the message. So they had to translate the emojis, which would translate into letters, and it spelled out, your teacher is having a baby. I had some of my students were excited. Some of them still didn't understand what I was talking about. So then from there, I showed them a slide of, my belly's going to start showing pretty soon, because I waited up until the point of where, the baggy clothes is not going to start cutting it anymore. So they're going to start questioning. So what I did was I showed them a picture of what the baby looks like inside right now, equivalently. And then I also brought in, at the time, I was about as big as a bell pepper. So I brought in a bell pepper and held it up to my stomach and said, this is about how big the baby is right now. And, as we progress, I can show them, okay, now this week, baby's as big as this fruit or this vegetable. So they can start to understand why, without going into too much detail. I leave some of those details to the parents if that's what they want to discuss. But, at least from what they're seeing. Another thing that I did was I put a visual calendar of the year up on the board. And then from there, I put a little mother stamp on each month that I might be out, so that they can kind of visually see, okay, my teacher might be out in February, March, May, June, whatever it might be. I didn't put any hard dates other than, this is the due date, but I might be out this long or this long. It's a tough subject to go over when you have some students that are very driven on specific dates. Some get fixated with dates, and it has to be this way. So we'll see how it goes. I'm trying to provide my staff with a lot of prepped lessons and support leading up to it, and just a lot of it's just front loading my students as much as I can and as often as I can, so that they're just not surprised when I'm gone. And yeah, and then from there we played some fun games where they guessed the gender, and then gave me some fun name suggestions, and yeah, we had a little fun with little mini baby shower games.
Yeah, that's huge though, because I think I'm impressed with the level of empathy, generally speaking. It's funny how you just peel things away, but I just realized, I don't know why I didn't before, the reason why I so appreciate that level of empathy is because that's one of the concerns that we have with Elijah, which is, how is this change going to work, especially if it's somebody that's not in his presence that usually is for a given period of time. And sometimes, he'll surprise you and he does really well with it. Just like you said, we'll see how it goes. And other times it's like, this is a really big deal. And in his case in particular, the way that is he may tell you, but he'll tell you, and he'll tell you, several times over. I one of the groups that I belong to, was a mom that was posting about her son's meltdown because he was looking for his phone. And I thought it was so fascinating that he spoke in the third person with regard to who is looking for his phone. And Elijah speaks like that at times. Sometimes I'll say Elijah will do so-and-so, Elijah will not. It's very green eggs and ham. That's kind of what I relate to it. I will not do so-and-so, Elijah will not do, and again, it to see somebody else going through something that you can relate to, that you've gone through as well. It all helps. It's like, again, anything that reminds us that we're not alone. I don't know. It's like you go to a certain event or something like that, maybe in a city that you're not used to, or state you're not used to. You're the only brother in the room. You look across the room, there's another brother, and they might be 500 feet away, but there's a little bit of a nod. And you're like, same thing. I saw somebody had a meme years ago of the Hunger Games, and it was like a salute or something like that. And it was like, the look that special needs moms give each other when you acknowledge each other out in public. All those things are just inclusion is everything. That's my long-winded way of saying that.
I want to know how you explain the fact that teacher Fiona is growing fruits and vegetables in her tummy.
And you could see that happen. I could see a
Yeah.
child being that literal, trying to figure out why.
Well, and then later I ate that bell pepper for a snack or something.
Oh boy, yeah, that's a whole new set of conversation questions and whatnot. That's hilarious.
Wow,
that really is fascinating. I'm looking at the site, and it's just a phenomenal resource. And I think that the challenge that we see, and we've been speaking to we've had a lot of guests on the show that deal with our children who are transitioning to adulthood, and looking at we work with there's a documentary film with two adult males, two adult men on the autism spectrum, and the journey that their mother has been on, and they're looking at how do you develop a location where our adult children can live, work, have services, get the support, and all of that. So I think as our children are getting older, and that's the focus on transitioning to adulthood is definitely an area that the special needs community, I know it's always been there, but it's something that I think we're going to see a lot more. And your focus on that area is, and again, I know you do K through 12 too, but focusing on that is because there's a lot of curriculum that's already been established in the K through 12. How do you establish the life skills curriculum? And that's so much more than just learning math or learning about an era in history or geography. Like that seems like a finite subject matter, but life skills seems infinite. Like, where do you go? What do you see as some of the more, I know you've talked about check writing, but some of the more common things that our children as they're transitioning are facing first and then next and then next. Like what's that look like? What's that path look like?
Yeah. So I actually get this question a lot from other teachers or educators. Like, what do I focus on? Like when it comes to life skills, there's no possible way to cover all of it. So what I always tell them is it's up to the individual. You're going to have to get to know the student, survey the parents, see what's important to them, because you don't want to be teaching them about writing checks if that's something that's not going to be applicable to them. Whereas, they might not have a dishwasher either. So you wouldn't want to teach them how to use a dishwasher, whatever it might be. Everyone's in a different scenario, what's important to them, what is also realistically attainable to them. You have to make sure you take the steps to learn the basics of that math skill, whether it's, doing basic adding or incorporating money values into that with adding. So you got to take the steps to get up to whatever it might be. If you're calculating taxes on a pay stub, you have to take the baby steps to get there first. So it's all about getting to know the individual, what's important to them, what their strengths, their preferences are. If they're going to have a career in the future, if that's even of interest to them. For some students and some families, they are like, nope, that's not, they're not going to work and they don't want to work. And that's totally fine as long as, they have a plan in place for helping that student, eventually be able to be financially sustainable, then that's fine. But for those that do want to work, then it's about figuring out, okay, what do you like to do in the workplace? Like, do you want to work during the daytime? Do you want to work at nighttime? Do you want to work indoors, outdoors? Do you like working with animals or people, or do you need a job where you don't have any interaction with people? It's finding out those little strengths and preferences that's going to help guide you towards a career path where you can focus on those particular skills. And then that's kind of how I figure out where my lessons are going to go towards. So each year I don't have the same lesson plan.
I'm sure it's going to be
Yeah.
child focused, right? Or student focused.
Yeah. So, a lot of times I see a lot of teachers will ask, well, I'd like a year-long scope and sequence plan for the year. And, you can have like a general plan for maybe general lessons that you teach to all of the students. But when it really comes down to it, it's going to come down to their IEP goals. And those IEP goals are focused in on that particular student's needs. And that's where a majority of the rest of my lessons are focused on, is those areas.
Yeah, I wanted to add two things to that, which is the first one is, well, the quality of the questions that we ask ourselves, right, always determines the quality of our life. And that's something that we've heard from the gentleman that's been a mentor to us by the name of Ed Milet, and I just find that to be so true. And as you're asking, where do you want to work? What kind of environment, night versus day? Those things are just so basic and so huge. And in our work in financial services, when we sit down with people in the general population, and it applies twice as much with someone who is neurodiverse, is when do you want to retire? What do you want life to look like? The questions, the quality of the questions are really, really important. What's the most important thing to you? Have you figured out what you want things to look like? And if you're in survival mode versus thriving mode, you haven't thought about a lot of those things because you're thinking about getting through today, not even thinking about the fact, even though in the back of your head, that you might not necessarily see tomorrow. So I think, again, it's so valuable that you give that example in terms of the questions. The other thing I want to do, just from a personal perspective, is encourage people to give themselves some grace, because, for any parent, the biggest challenge that you're going to have, whether your child is neurotypical or otherwise, is striking a balance between giving your children fish versus teaching them to fish. Just as you would take a bullet for them, there's a part of you that wants to give them all the fish in the world. And I want to encourage those who may have discovered that they're leaning more one way than the other in terms of the fish giving as opposed to teaching the art of fishing. Give yourself some grace, because, Elijah I swear he was 3 last week. He turned 17 in May. And I caught myself, realizing how much more fish giving that we are doing me than anything else. Here's the best example, and this is why you should give yourself some grace. I was talking, my wife had made some French toast for him and blueberries. That's a typical breakfast for him: French toast, waffles or pancakes, and blueberries. Right?
I'll be right
so
over.
She made that. So she made that, and I'm talking to her about the things that I'm having him do, which we would ordinarily do for him, right? And I'm telling her how patient I need to be when he resists, because if he's resistant to the idea of doing it for himself, I'm partly to blame for that because I'm doing it for him, right? And as I'm putting the plate together, or she put the plate together, I'm grabbing the napkin and getting ready to take it upstairs to him. And she just says, and she wasn't trying to be smart, she just said, so you mean like maybe you want to tell him that that's ready? And I'm like, and I stopped and I looked and I'm like, here I am getting ready to take the plate upstairs because that's what we would usually do, like serve him. And I have to stop. And if she didn't say it, I would go from telling her what, we should be doing this, to taking it right upstairs. And so I told him, hey, your breakfast is ready. Come down and get it. And he, and her point was, it might sit for a little bit, but he's going to come down and he'll get it. So we have to teach ourselves to change, those directions if we're going to do that. And at the same time, give ourselves grace, because that's really a struggle for me in life, generally speaking, anyway. Just in terms of, here's what I've been doing. I need to go in this direction or make this tweak in order to live more intentionally or make my life better. And it's just something that's always, tough for me. And when that happens, I'm just like, ugh, especially at this stage of life, you're like, how much more of this gift of life that I'm given am I going to make the most of versus wasting time? So anyway, true confession.
No, I totally hear that all the time from a lot of the parents I work with, especially when I report home, like, oh, like so-and-so was sweeping today for their on-campus job. And the parent is like mind blown, like, what? They don't know how to sweep. Like they won't sweep for me at home. And, sometimes it just takes, a little nudge to, hey, like maybe if you initiate, hey, we're going to start, even if it's just doing it for 1 minute, you know, it's sometimes I think what ends up happening, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Sean, is it's just easier to do it than to wait and have him come get it, or it might, for some
Oh
students,
my
it
gosh.
might result in
Corrective.
a behavior.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times those habits are just easier to do it yourself than to let them do it. But at
Well,
the end of the
it's
day,
everything. Yeah, no, you're completely right. There's no correction there, because I remember Brian would give this example when he would talk about when we talk about worry, or how people perceive certain things, and you'd go like, okay, am I really worried for, or maybe even our child's safety, right? Sometimes there's legitimate reasons to worry about their safety, whether they have an awareness for danger or trusting others, whatever the case might be. But then there's other things when it comes to trying new things. Again, just about being on autopilot and being conscious, raising our consciousness and think about what we think about. Sometimes we have to ask ourselves, wait a minute, is my concern about my child's safety or about my child, period? Or is it about me? Because it is a whole lot easier. It's easier to give your child fish, than it is to teach them to fish. So certain things that I'm going to do, it's like, it's a lot easier if I just do it for him right now. It really is. It takes more time. And here's the other thing. So one, if you find yourself giving more fish than teaching the fish, give yourself grace, especially if you are aware of it. That's the first step. But then the other thing is, for those of you who have children that are young, I could say, don't make the mistake I made, and, start teaching those fishing skills earlier, because what happens is you're trying to unteach that which you've taught. But then at the same time, you always have to remember that, and this is what my wife is just like great at, which I struggle with, which she'll always say is, give him credit. You never know. Because I have to catch myself going, well, no, he doesn't do so-and-so. And now I've evolved to the place where when I say that, I'll go, I don't know what he's going to say. Maybe he's going to resist, and maybe so you roll the dice and you take those chances. Yeah. But you're absolutely right.
It's amazing to me. And I think because you're in it, I'm sure that you see this a lot, but it's almost like you need a companion curriculum for the parents of transitioning adults, right? In other ways, it's sort of like, because exactly this example, if Sean doesn't, because we're not conscious, because we've been doing it our whole lives while they're younger, as they transition, like what are the steps that we can take to make sure that our young adult children are moving into that, that independence space, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure you get it all the time because you say parents ask you all the time.
Yeah, I do. There's part of me that doesn't feel like I can super confidently, tell a parent what to do, because I'm not in your shoes. I'm not in your home with your child all day. It's a completely different ballgame. Whereas I'm at school and I have staff support, and there's a different expectation at school, and you're there to do work. Home is supposed to be a safe space where you get to relax and you get to do fun things. So, I see that, and it was, it's a tough conversation to have, because I can't fully put myself in your shoes, and I can't tell you what to do, because, it's just, I get why things get to where they get, because it's just easier to do one thing, or maybe, and I can give you strategies to use, and you just have to be willing to put the time in, and, maybe even have a little bit of a regression period of where you might see behaviors come up, because they've been used to getting those pancakes delivered to them however many years, and all of a sudden we're going to switch that up. So, there's going to be some setbacks, is you have to know that and expect it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have to be willing to put the time in and the effort to see that through. And then I think that the end goal there is going to be so rewarding that you're going to have some free time for yourself, and then they're going to be independent, and life is going to be a little bit more fulfilling, because they're going to be able to maybe one day make those pancakes on their own, if that
exactly
makes it go through.
And then there's two other aspects I just thought of, which is, I'm half of a team with my wife. Like, for instance, if if I was single and I just had my thick head to deal with, I would have taken the pancakes upstairs, right? So for someone that is a single parent, it becomes twice as difficult, because you're talking about when you raise your consciousness, you're thinking about what you think about. You step outside yourself. If you're blessed as I am to have someone that is an amazing partner and spouse, then you're able to, that person is outside looking in every now and then. The other thing to think about is even people that have each other, but if that's all they have. Brian and I started a men's group called The Den. We meet every other week, and these are male caregivers or dads. And one of the guys on the call was talking about we began the call and, how's everybody doing? And he was like, okay. And I was like, well, I can sense that, okay, you're not one to complain. So there's more there. If you want to, do you mind telling us about the more? And he went right into how he and his wife have each other. They're yoked and joined and everything like that. But that's kind of all they have. In our case, our family has a better understanding than they did before, when they would say, oh, just put such and such in front of him. All he needs is this. All he needs is that, when they don't understand behavioral issues or sensitivities to foods. This gentleman, his family, his in-laws are in a different country, and his parents live minutes away, but they just can't grasp. They don't understand. And so they don't have the strongest sense of community, and they feel like it's just them. That's why there's forums like this, as well as, the group that I mentioned, because we have to just work hard to remind people that they're not alone. And sometimes the way that happens is not just by caring for someone, but by sharing what you're going through, not necessarily complaining. But if you let other people know exactly what you're facing, and then you have an idea as to how you're going to get through it, or even if you just don't know and you're just sharing, somebody else will get from that, oh, I'm not alone, and there's a measurable value in that. And that's just another example of, quite frankly, what you're doing. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Fiona. Are you familiar with the Yes I Can Unity Through Music group?
I'm not.
They're in Southern California. They're based up in Santa Clarita. And we've had Brett Lieberman, the executive director, on a couple of times on the podcast. He helps transitioning adults move into they learn the job skills to have jobs in the music and entertainment industry.
Okay.
So it would be an interesting resource we'll make the connection to you afterwards, because it may be an opportunity for folks that have a desire, a tendency, or some skills that can be taught to have potential jobs in the film and music industries.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a great resource. We're kind of at the point where we're getting close to the end of our show already. Sean's going to ask you a question. We'll throw it over to Sean to ask that final question before we wrap it up.
All right. This is the point of the show where we'll ask the following question, which is, our ability to change the world is based on our ability or willingness to change ourselves. So with that in mind, give us just one example of a thought or a belief that you once really believed strongly, but no longer believe to be true.
So slightly different, but I couldn't really think of any like strong beliefs that I've had. I think it's more so the perspective of knowing to put yourself in other people's shoes, or maybe don't get upset about something, or when it comes to like the internet and you have the so-called trolls that'll comment on something that they might not have anything to do with it. And as a teacher, we experience this from people like, oh, teachers are lazy, or oh, teachers don't know, they're paid babysitters, glorified babysitters, and that kind of stuff. And it's the people that are making those comments have no idea how much work we do, and that we're actually underpaid. They just think it's glamorous. We get summer breaks, and what are you complaining about? But the amount of planning that goes into each day, and just on top, tons of like meetings, paperwork, and then let alone you're also just spending the day teaching students on top of all of that. It's a lot of work. Okay, same thing when it comes to somebody with neurodiverse needs. I can't put myself in their shoes. So when they are frustrated about something, I have to try and somehow put myself in their shoes to try and understand how I can help them, whatever it might be. It's the whole idea of just putting yourself in someone else's shoes before you judge them, before you
Mm-hmm.
feel the need to make a rude comment or just a
Yeah.
comment that, just not something that you don't know anything about or you think you might know. If that's not your situation and you can't speak on behalf of it, it's just your opinion. And
100%.
Yeah.
just be nicer. Be nicer to
That's
people.
that's where we usually always end the show. And I just want to add, for me, one of the beliefs that I've had is I used to think I had to comment on anything that was unjust or wrong. I used to think that I wanted on social media to have as many followers as possible because I want to shine a light on as many people that are inspirational and doing great work in and outside the special needs community. I want to inspire as many people as possible. And I realized that, when you talk about trying to step in somebody else's shoes, I've always looked at that as stepping in someone's shoes to understand, which means, and that understanding means I'm going to interact with them and give them and show them empathy. Sometimes you need to step in someone's shoes to understand why you're not going to respond too, because I've
Yeah.
seen a couple of posts on things that I posted and the conversations that have taken place afterwards. And sometimes they're, racially motivated and, hate stuff, especially with all the stuff that's going on lately. And just maybe 2-3 weeks ago, I would be like, that needs to be defended. I'd be like, no, it doesn't. The comment needs to be removed. That account needs to be blocked. And you need to, and it's funny because in my consciousness, I've always thought we should be about exchanging energy. We shouldn't give our energy away just to have it robbed, and we definitely shouldn't be trying to just drain somebody else's. Our time on this planet is so much more rewarding and rich when we exchange energy with people. And despite knowing that, I've had cases where I exchanged the wrong energy. So, and I thought about that as you were saying that. And so we just have to continue to evolve and ask ourselves the right questions over and over. Like that question, always, what do I believe? What do I no longer believe that I once really did? And if the answer for someone when they answer that question is, well, I don't have anything that applies to, well, then you might want to think about that because it means that you're not necessarily growing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on that, Fiona, thank you for being a guest today and for sharing what you do. It's an amazing resource. We're grateful that there are phenomenal people like you out there teaching our children the work that goes into that, the planning, the preparation. There is no summer off. You guys are doing continuing education and planning and preparation all year. So we definitely appreciate the work that you're doing. It's really amazing. So great to have you as a guest. And as we sign off again, I want to thank everybody listening. Hit the subscribe button if you're catching us on the YouTube channel after the fact. If you want to send us an email, we are just2dads@gmail.com. Thank you for listening today. Thanks for sharing and liking with your friends. Also, Billy Footwear, who's one of our sponsors. We love Billy, who makes adaptive footwear for people of all ages. So go to billyfootwear.com, and if you're catching the show link after the fact, you can click on that link and get 10% off. And then I just want to say also, empathy and love is important more now than ever. Empathy, what you're just saying. If you see somebody's situation, you may not know what's going on with them. Be a little empathetic. Be kinder, for crying out loud. You never know what that person's going through. And also, if you can look at the world through lenses of love, it's amazing how beautiful the world can be. So on that, I'm going to thank you again. Throw it over to Sean for our final wrap up. Sean, go ahead and wrap us out of here.
I'm just so thankful for this time today. I also want to thank Elijah's teacher, Aaron Barrett, for introducing us. That's just so grateful. The link for our men's group is for the forums is on the screen. If you happen to be actually looking at the show, whether it's live on Facebook or on YouTube after the fact, it is called The Den. I want to thank everyone that has taken the time to tune in, whether you're doing that live or after the fact, and wherever you get your podcasts. And again, remember, let's try and be a little more childlike and less childish. Questions are so much more powerful. than statements. And I want to wish everyone the happiest of Thanksgivings. Fiona, thank you so much for your time today. And to everyone within the sound of my voice, we love you.
We love you. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.